The alien princess finds it difficult to stay calm when she first meets a human soldier. The throne room of Arillan Prime was designed to intimidate, but it was not working on Princess Nysera. The vaulted crystal arches reflected the shimmer of the suns outside. The banners of her lineage swayed in simulated breezes, pumped through vents in the ceiling, and the royal guard stood in precise formation with weapons that could vaporize steel in an instant. All of it was meant to project calm power, yet her ears betrayed her. Long, tapering, traitorous ears that twitched the moment the doors hissed open. He stepped through with the clank of heavy boots, and the sound echoed so strangely against the crystalline floor that Nysera almost laughed. The Arillan builders had not considered how human footwear would ruin the acoustics. His armor bore scorch marks, and his hair looked as if it had lost a battle with both gravity and discipline. She opened her mouth to deliver the traditional greeting of her people, a phrase of poetic balance meant to establish her control of the room. Instead, she coughed. A cough. One small rasp of air, and the royal attendants were already shifting uneasily. The High Minister to her left tilted his head in a sharp angle that translated to "Control yourself, Your Highness." Nysera tried again. "Human soldier," she said, her voice higher than intended. "You stand before the House of Elther, and you will." She stopped, because the soldier had tilted his head and was staring with a strange, almost amused expression. It was the look of someone who had walked through fire and found palace ceremony less threatening than a lukewarm drink. Her ears twitched again. "You will stand straighter," she finished weakly. The human blinked. His armor squeaked when he adjusted, and then, just to ruin everything further, he smiled. Nysera felt her throat tighten. Was this some sort of human combat technique, disarming an opponent with the sheer audacity of teeth? If so, it was working. The guards were watching. The ministers were watching. The whole throne room was watching. Her training, years of practice in icy detachment, demanded she regain control. But instead she blurted, "Do all humans have faces that compact, or is yours defective?" A silence descended so heavy that Nysera swore she could hear the hum of the palace reactors deep below. The soldier raised one eyebrow, and then, impossibly, he laughed. The sound was entirely out of place, too loud, too raw. The guard stiffened. Several ministers muttered about disrespect, but the soldier kept laughing. Not a mocking laugh, but something genuine, as though he had stumbled into a joke only he understood. Nysera felt heat rise in her cheeks, though she quickly masked it with a practiced sweep of her robes. "I've been called worse," he said at last, his voice steady, rough, and irritatingly warm. She ought to have ordered him silenced. She ought to have summoned the guards to remove him for insulting the throne. Instead, Nysera's lips betrayed her. They curved upward, the faintest suggestion of amusement, and she quickly pretended she was merely testing the flexibility of her mouth. The High Minister leaned toward her, whispering sharply, "Your Highness, remember your composure." "Yes," Nysera whispered back. "My composure is entirely intact. It is just reconsidering its options." The soldier's eyes flickered, as though he caught her words. If he did, he made no comment, which was somehow worse. Silence between them thrummed like a ship's engine warming before launch. She needed to say something, anything, to break it. "What is your designation?" she asked. "Sergeant Cale Draven," he replied. "Sergeant." She tried to sound commanding, but it came out like a question. "You were summoned here to assist?" He shrugged, the motion casual enough to make her ears twitch again. "That's what they told me, though I wasn't warned I'd be inspected for face defects." The chamber guard shifted uneasily. Nysera pressed her lips together, desperate not to laugh, because if she laughed, the entire dignity of the throne room would collapse into rubble. Yet she could not help herself. Her shoulders trembled. "Your armor," she said hastily, seeking refuge in formality, "is unusual." "It's dented," Cale admitted. "Keeps me humble." One of the ministers gasped at the irreverence. Nysera almost choked, holding back a smile. This was wrong. All of it. She was supposed to be untouchable, a figure of celestial serenity. Instead, she was standing on the edge of laughter in front of a soldier who had just admitted to wearing broken armor. Her heart beat too quickly. It was not fear. She knew fear, and this was something altogether more inconvenient. The throne room's great windows opened to space, a slow rotation of stars casting silver across the floor. It should have reminded her of her people's destiny, the vastness of the dominion, her unshakable role within it. Instead, she caught herself wondering if the soldier's hair would ever lie flat, or if humans were doomed to perpetual disarray. She folded her hands, straightened her posture, and drew in a deep breath. Calm. She needed calm. Yet even as she gathered herself, Kale's voice broke the stillness again. So, he said casually, as if speaking across a tavern table instead of a galactic throne, are your ears supposed to twitch like that? Or is that a defective feature too? The ministers nearly fainted. The guards gripped their weapons. Nysera froze, her ears betraying her with another flick. And then, gods forgive her, she laughed. It was small, a breath of laughter, but it echoed strangely against the crystal walls, and once begun, she could not stop it. The soldier grinned as though he had won some grand battle. The ministers looked horrified. The high minister pressed both hands to his temples. Nysera tried to compose herself, wiping at the corners of her eyes, as if brushing away dust. You are impertinent, she said, voice trembling with the effort to sound regal. Thank you, Kale said. The throne room was chaos. Guards unsure whether to arrest him, ministers ready to faint from scandal, the princess herself laughing when she should have been furious. It was not the meeting her people had prepared for. But somewhere, deep in her racing heart, Nysera knew it was the meeting she would never forget. The throne room felt different the next day, though Nysera knew it was exactly the same. The crystalline arches still gleamed with refracted light, the banners still drifted in the climate-controlled air, and the guards still held their weapons in unervingly identical stances. Nothing had changed, except that a single human had walked into her life and tilted it, as though her carefully balanced universe were nothing more than a child's toy globe. Kale Draven stood at the center of the chamber again, this time without the stiff formal entrance. He looked more comfortable than yesterday, which was unsettling. A human soldier should not look comfortable in front of the throne of Arillan Prime. His boots scuffed on the floor, leaving faint marks that horrified the chamber attendants, who were already whispering about the expense of polishing crystal tiles. Nysera forced her voice into steadiness. Sergeant, your presence is not ceremonial today. You will explain the details of your mission. He scratched the back of his neck. Mission. Right. They told me to assist in fostering interspecies understanding, which I'm guessing translates to me standing here while you glare at me until your ears fall off. Her ears twitched, of course, which ruined the entire effect of her glare. She heard muffled laughter from one of the younger guards, quickly silenced with a sharp look from the captain. Nysera drew herself taller. Arillan ears are not detachable. They are permanent. Kale smirked. Pity. Would make a good souvenir. Gasps rippled across the chamber. Ministers leaned in, muttering about insolence and treason, but Nysera raised a hand to silence them. She knew if she allowed the human to be dragged away now, the image of his infuriating grin would haunt her anyway. Better to face the fire directly. You find humor in everything, Sergeant. Helps me stay sane, he replied. And sometimes it helps the people around me too. Judging by the way everyone looks like they're about to suffocate from holding their breath, I'd say you all could use it. One minister choked on his own indignation. Nysera tried not to smile, but her ears betrayed her again, twitching once, twice. She shifted in her throne, hiding the movement behind her elaborate robes. Very well, she said. If you are here for interspecies understanding, then answer me this. Why do humans always stand as though they are about to be punched? Kale tilted his head. Because we usually are. It's cultural conditioning. Keep your balance. Keep your guard up. And besides, you'd be surprised how many times posture has saved my life. She frowned. That cannot be accurate. It's true, he said. One time a plasma round skimmed over my shoulder instead of hitting my chest, only because I was slouching. Several guards shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure whether to believe such absurdity. Nysera blinked, trying to imagine surviving a battle because of bad posture. Against her will, her lips curved again. She quickly covered it by pretending to cough. "Your survival methods are unusual," she said. "You should see our diet." Kale muttered. The minister closest to her shot her a horrified look, as if the mere idea of discussing food with an outsider was blasphemous. Nysera ignored it. Her curiosity outweighed protocol, though she carefully disguised it under a tone of bored questioning. "What sustenance do humans consume?" Kale brightened immediately. "Oh, all sorts. Meat, plants, fermented drinks that make us think we're funnier than we are. There's something called pizza, flat bread, cheese, sauce, toppings. You'd like it. Unless your people have outlawed happiness." Nysera stared. "You ferment drinks to alter your humor?" "Exactly." The throne room filled with muffled shock. A culture that openly encouraged temporary madness was clearly barbaric. Yet something about Kale's grin as he described it made the practice sound almost enviable. Nysera shook her head, ears twitching faintly. Arillans drink nutrient elixirs balanced by molecular precision. They guarantee optimal health for 5 generations. Kale made a face. "That sounds like something you give to plants, not people." This time, Nysera laughed before she could stop herself. It came out sharper, more sudden than she intended, bouncing off the crystalline walls until even the guards seemed startled. She cleared her throat, straightened, and said, "You are insufferable." "And yet," Kale said, "you haven't had me thrown out an airlock. I'll take that as a compliment." She ought to have ordered him silenced again. Instead, she leaned forward, narrowing her eyes, studying him with the intensity she usually reserved for tactical holograms. His presence was disruptive, his humor dangerous, his casual defiance corrosive to everything she had been trained to be. And yet she could not deny that the air in the chamber felt lighter when he spoke. The High Minister interrupted with a hiss. "Your Highness, this exchange is beneath the throne. We must return to matters of defense. The Dominion fleet requires your—" "Enough," Nysera said sharply. The chamber fell silent. She turned back to Kale, her voice steady now. "Sergeant Draven, you will remain in Arillan space as a liaison. You will report directly to me." Kale raised his brows. "You sure about that? I mean, I'm good at getting shot at, less good at diplomacy." Nysera's ears twitched again. "I am aware." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The ministers whispered in scandalized tones, the guards shifted uncertainly, and the chamber seemed to hum with the weight of something entirely new. Nysera felt her heart beat faster, though her expression remained calm. Kale finally broke the silence. "Guess I'll need to clean my boots if I'm hanging around here. Unless the crystal flooring has a sense of humor, too." This time, Nysera did not bother hiding her smile. The galaxy might judge her for it. Her ministers might despair. Her people might whisper of scandal. But in that moment, laughter slipped free, as inevitable as the pull of a star. Nysera had never allowed a human inside her private council chamber before. Yet here Kale Draven was, slouched in a chair designed for dignitaries who normally carried themselves like stiff holograms. He tapped his armored fingers against the polished surface of the table, leaving faint scratches that would horrify the cleaning drones later. The ministers sat around him in stony silence, their eyes darting between the princess and the soldier as if waiting for someone to ignite. Nysera lifted a hand, activating the chamber's holo display. A swarm of light formed above the table, shaping itself into the outline of a star system, rings of orbit marked in glowing threads. "This is the Tanar corridor," she explained. "Our scouts report unidentified vessels slipping through its trade lanes. Their warp signatures do not match any registered fleet." Kale leaned forward, squinting. "Looks like a bunch of glowing noodles." The ministers nearly fainted at the irreverence. Nysera fought back a smile. "They are not noodles. They are warp signatures." "Sure," Kale said. "But if you're hungry enough, anything can be noodles." A stifled laugh escaped one of the younger aides, who quickly hid her face behind a datapad. The High Minister shot her a glare sharp enough to cut steel. Nysera ignored them all and focused on the soldier. "These incursions must be investigated. You will accompany me." "Accompany?" Kale leaned back in his chair, stretching as if he were in a tavern, and not the royal council. I thought I was here to tell jokes and ruin your floor tiles. You are here, Nysera said, because apparently I find your ridiculousness useful. The ministers gasped again. Nysera waved them silent. Kale's grin widened, and she regretted the words immediately. Besides, she added quickly, humans are reckless. That might prove valuable against unknown enemies. I'll take that as a compliment, he said. Nysera deactivated the holo display with a flick of her wrist. The glowing noodles vanished. She rose from her seat, her robes flowing behind her, and the guards straightened automatically. Prepare the Starblade. We depart within the hour. Kale whistled low. Starblade. That's a name. My ship was called the Mule. Guess which one sounded less impressive? Perhaps it was more accurate, she said. He chuckled. Fair. When they boarded the Starblade, the ministers remained behind, muttering warnings about tradition and the sanctity of the throne. Nysera ignored them. She led Kale through the vessel's corridors, past crews, who stared openly at the sight of a human walking beside their princess. Kale saluted one of them mockingly, which earned a startled squeak. Nysera sighed. Must you provoke everyone? Must you frown at everything? He countered. Her ears twitched. She quickened her pace. The Starblade slipped into warp, the corridor outside the viewports stretching into streams of light. Kale stood at the glass, pressing his hand against it as though trying to feel the distortion. Never gets old, he said softly. Like the universe forgot how to stand still. Nysera found herself pausing. For once his voice carried no joke, no grin, just quiet awe. Something about it unsettled her more than his laughter did. She turned away before he could see her expression. Hours later, alarms rippled through the ship. The crew reported a vessel dead ahead, drifting near the edge of the corridor. Nysera strode to the command dais, Kale trailing at her side. The holo display flickered again, this time showing a jagged silhouette of metal. Pirate craft, the captain said grimly. Nysera nodded. Bring weapons online. Kale squinted. Wait, is that smoke? In space. It is plasma venting from their reactor, Nysera corrected. Right, he said. Space smoke. The Starblade closed distance, weapons charging. Nysera lifted a hand. Hold fire. They may surrender. Kale muttered. Or they may shoot first. Just saying. As if summoned by his words, the pirate craft suddenly flared with energy. A volley of crude plasma bolts streaking toward the Starblade. Shields absorbed the impact, vibrating the deck beneath their feet. Kale grabbed the nearest rail, grinning despite the chaos. Told you. Nysera gave him a glare sharp enough to freeze a sun, then shouted orders. Return fire. Disable their engines. The Starblade responded with precision, beams of blue light carving across the pirate hull. Explosions blossomed like flowers, scattering debris into the void. Kale leaned over the rail. That's one way to tell someone their parking permit expired. Despite herself, Nysera almost laughed. Almost. The pirate ship finally fell silent, its weapons dark. The crew cheered, but Nysera remained tense. She felt something wrong in the pit of her chest, an echo of danger still lingering. She turned to Kale. Boarding party. You're with me. He grinned. Finally. Field trip. They crossed the void in a boarding pod, slamming into the pirate hull with a clang. The airlock hissed open, revealing smoke-choked corridors and flickering lights. Kale stepped in first, blaster raised, muttering, If I get shot, I'm haunting this ship. Humans do not haunt, Nysera said. We do if it annoys people, he replied. The corridors reeked of scorched metal. They advanced cautiously, guards at their backs. Nysera's ears twitched at every echo, her senses straining. When they reached the control deck, the answer revealed itself. The pirate crew was gone, no bodies, no captives, nothing but empty uniforms scattered on the floor. Kale crouched, lifting one helmet. That's creepy. Nysera felt a chill crawl down her spine. They were taken. By who? Kale asked. The lights flickered once, twice, and then a low hum filled the chamber, deeper than any engine. Nysera's ears flattened instinctively. She looked at Kale, who raised his brows. Well, he said, either that's the sound of the galaxy ending, or someone forgot to turn off their microwave. Despite the tension, Nysera's lips curved. The humor cut through her fear, like a blade through mist. She lifted her weapon. "Stay close, Sergeant. Whatever took them may still be here." Kale grinned. "Blaster ready." "Good. Saves us the trouble of chasing it." And together, they stepped deeper into the shadows of the abandoned ship. The hum inside the pirate ship deepened until it vibrated through the walls, a low resonance that made the deck plates tremble. Nysera held her blaster steady, scanning the shadows. Kale tilted his head, listening. "That's not reactor noise," he muttered. "That's something alive." Nysera gave him a sharp look. "Machines are alive in their own way." He shook his head. "No, this is the kind of noise you feel in your teeth. Trust me, reactors don't growl." A panel burst open with a screech, cables dangling like tendrils. Nysera's guards raised their rifles, but Kale waved them back. "Easy. If the ship's hungry, we shouldn't look like snacks." "Sergeant, you are not amusing," Nysera snapped, though her ears betrayed her with an involuntary twitch. From the corridor ahead came a shimmer of light, almost liquid, sliding along the walls. The pirate uniforms scattered on the floor stirred, tugged by unseen forces, and then folded into the shimmer as though being swallowed. Kale muttered, "Well, that's one way to do laundry." The guards looked ready to open fire, but Nysera raised her hand. "Hold. We do not know what it is." The shimmer paused, hovering like a wave caught mid-motion. A faint voice echoed, fractured and layered, speaking in tones that scraped against the ear. Kale squinted. Did it just say hungry or hurry? Because those mean very different things. Nysera stepped forward, ignoring the panicked hiss from her captain. "Identify yourself." The shimmer quivered, then expanded, forming a vaguely humanoid outline, though its features melted and reformed with each passing second. Kale leaned closer to Nysera. "Looks like someone spilled their hologram." The figure spoke again, words coalescing from static. "They are taken. We harvest. Flesh unneeded." Kale lifted his blaster. "Yeah, that's not creepy at all." Nysera felt her chest tighten, but she forced her voice steady. "You destroyed the crew." "Not destroyed. Converted." The shimmer pulsed, and the scattered uniforms collapsed into dust. Kale exhaled sharply. "Okay, yeah, definitely creepy. 10 out of 10 on the nightmare scale." Before Nysera could respond, the shimmer surged forward. Blaster fire lit the corridors as the guards unleashed volleys of energy, but the shots passed through harmlessly, absorbed into the liquid glow. Kale fired 3 times, then holstered his weapon with a shrug. "Right. Shooting the puddle doesn't work. Good to know." "Fall back," Nysera commanded. They retreated toward the boarding pod, the shimmer following like a tide. The walls groaned as the ship shuddered, metal twisting as though alive. Kale muttered, "This is why I prefer enemies that bleed." Inside the pod, they slammed the hatch closed. The star blade reeled them in, disconnecting with a violent jolt. Nysera pressed her hands to the control surface. "Scan that vessel. I want every particle analyzed." The captain's voice crackled through the comms. "Your Highness, the energy readings are inconsistent. It registers as plasma, but also organic matter. It should not exist." Kale leaned over the console. "So we just met a glowing jellyfish made of plasma that eats people and wears their clothes. Wonderful." Nysera pinched the bridge of her nose. "Sergeant, please refrain from giving it imaginative descriptions." "Fine," he said. "I'll just call it Creepy McGlowface." Her ears twitched so hard she turned away before anyone could see. When the Starblade's weapons targeted the pirate ship, the shimmer pulsed again. The entire vessel collapsed inward, folding like paper, vanishing into a pinpoint of light. Kale blinked. Did the ship just teleport itself into origami? The crew scrambled to recalculate, but the pirate craft was gone. Only silence remained. Nysera clenched her fists. Whatever it was, it is not finished. Later, in her private chambers aboard the Starblade, Nysera reviewed the data. Kale sat across from her, boots on the edge of the table until she swatted them off with a glare. He grinned, unrepentant. "Admit it. That thing scared you." "I do not scare," she said. Your ears were vibrating like antennae. They are not antennae, she snapped. Sure, Cale said. But if you stood near a radio, I bet you'd get better reception. Nysera exhaled sharply, trying not to smile. Sergeant, you test the limits of my patience. And yet you keep me around, he said lightly. She ignored the way her chest tightened again. Instead, she pointed at the holo display. This anomaly may be connected to the incursions along the corridor. If it spreads, it'll eat more people and turn their ships into glowing soup. Cale finished. Her ears twitched again. You are impossible, but entertaining, he added. Silence lingered between them, not heavy, but charged. Outside the viewport, stars stretched endlessly, indifferent to the sparks of life crawling between them. Nysera folded her hands, speaking softly. If the Dominion learns of this, they will demand retaliation. They will want war. Cale leaned back, expression thoughtful for once. And you don't. She met his gaze. I want answers. He smiled faintly. Good. Because I'd hate to think the universe's last defense against creepy McGlowface is a bunch of ministers who faint whenever someone tells a joke. Her laugh slipped out before she could stop it. It was quiet, but it stayed, curling around her like warmth against the void. For the first time in days, she allowed it. The Starblade returned to Arillan Prime, trailing silence, heavier than debris. No pirates, no wreckage, only the memory of a ship that had folded into nothingness. Nysera stood at the viewport, her reflection faint against the stars. The ministers awaited her report with sharpened words and hungry eyes, but she delayed the meeting. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of her throne not as a burden of duty, but as a barrier between herself and the truth she now carried. Cale broke the silence in his usual way, leaning against the bulkhead with arms crossed. So, do we tell your council the truth? That an interstellar puddle monster is out there converting people into light salad? Nysera's ears twitched. We will not call it that. Fine. Creepy McGlowface, then. Sergeant. He grinned. Point is, if you tell them, they'll panic. If you don't tell them, they'll panic later. Either way, lots of panic. She turned sharply, robe swirling. My people are not weak. They will face truth without fear. Cale raised a brow. Like you did. Her ears betrayed her again. She looked away. I adapted. He smirked. You twitched. A lot. Despite herself, Nysera felt a laugh bubbling. She swallowed it down, but it softened the knot in her chest. Perhaps adaptation requires more than composure. The council convened that evening in the Great Hall. Holograms of distant systems spun above the table, ministers leaning forward like carrion birds. Nysera recounted the events with precision. The empty pirate ship, the shimmer, the conversion. Murmurs rose like a storm. We must strike first, shouted one minister. We must close the corridor, cried another. Nysera raised her hand, and silence rippled outward. She felt Cale's gaze from where he stood by the guards, steady and grounding. We will do neither, she declared. We will not fight an enemy we do not yet understand. We will not cower behind walls while others vanish. We will investigate. We will learn. Gasps filled the chamber. Your Highness, the High Minister hissed. Such patience is dangerous. Patience, Nysera said, is not weakness. It is strength enough to resist fear. Her ears twitched again, but this time she did not hide it. Ministers stared, unsettled, but no one spoke. Cale's grin widened like he'd just won a bet with the universe. The meeting ended in uneasy silence. Alone again in her chamber, Nysera finally allowed herself to laugh, softly at first, then louder. Cale leaned against the doorframe, watching her with that infuriatingly calm amusement. You changed the script, he said. I rewrote it, she replied. He tilted his head. Not bad for someone who thought my face was defective. Her laughter spilled again, echoing off the crystalline walls. She sat, exhausted yet strangely lighter. Sergeant Draven, I believe your presence has made me less calm. Good, he said simply. Silence settled between them, not the tense silence of the throne room, nor the charged silence of the pirate ship, but something gentler. Nysera studied him, really studied him. The dents in his armor, the stubborn line of his jaw, the humor he carried like a shield. She realized then that her heart no longer raced in confusion. It raced in choice. When the time came to stand before her people again, Nysera walked with Kale at her side. Whispers filled the hall, scandalized and curious, but she let them whisper. Her ears twitched openly, no longer a weakness but a declaration. She would feel, she would laugh, she would lead differently than those before her. Later, when the Starblade set out once more, this time not to destroy but to search, Kale strapped into the co-pilot's seat. He leaned over with a grin. "So, Princess, ready for another field trip?" Nysera's lips curved, her voice steady. "Only if you promise not to call every anomaly Creepy McGlowface." "No promises," he said. She laughed, the sound ringing clear as the ship leapt into warp, stars stretching into endless lines of light. For the first time in her life, Nysera did not dread the unknown. She welcomed it, because she would not face it alone. And in that leap, the princess who once lived in perfect calm became something new. A leader who could stand steady even while laughing, a ruler whose composure allowed space for warmth, and a woman whose forbidden bond had already begun to reshape the destiny of two worlds. The end.